when you really put your brain to it, or if you approach every campaign where you're selling something as like, what's my upsell going to be? What's my downsell going to be? What would my order bump be? What's a cross sell? If you can come up with these things and make it a part of your process when you go to build your online store or add a product to it, you're just going to do better over time. It's just a multiplier effect.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 267, and we're going to talk about music marketing today, and specifically what you can learn from your online shopping experiences on some of the stores of your favorite brands. And in particular, we're going to talk about Amazon. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Ed Isola, and we have with us today our partner, Mr. Kyle Circa Lemaire. Kyle, welcome back to the show. What's up, dude?
It's good to be back, dude. Just kicking it with you fellers.
Happy to have you, man. And happy to talk about this topic today, which I think to this day still largely goes unheard and ignored in the music business. And that's really making an impactful online store that works to take customers through a buying experience and not just, throwing up a whole bunch of products onto a store and hoping that people take action and buy a lot of stuff and shop around. So it's going to be fun to talk about this. I've got some cool stories to share, but I was really excited to kind of kick this off. I know, at the agency, we do a lot of work on helping artists optimize and make online stores and sales funnels that perform really well. But when you look out there in the wild, it's not really something that you see a lot of, especially in music.
I guess my first thought when it comes to you never see it is just why? And I know we're going to get into that, but at this point for me, it's such a given that you should be making these different kind of offers to help increase your cart value that I can't remember a day where, and there was a day where I didn't know that those things existed, but it's hard to now think about making a sales offer where those things aren't included.
One of the things I admire about Amazon from an entrepreneurial perspective is that their whole thesis was just let's make it really easy for customers to buy stuff, to be customers. They make it painfully easy. And that means making it easy to buy more. And that's something they've always done really well. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I love that whole kind of thesis. And I think that it's a good mindset to think within when you're building an online store of any kind, whether that's a sales funnel or whether that's just a merch store. Make it as easy as possible for your customers to be customers and continue to be customers. But it's really not something you see a lot of right now. And just to share a quick example, this just happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was shopping on Amazon for, I think it was light bulbs, actually. We moved into our new place and I was getting LED light bulbs, and I had them in my cart, and I was waiting a little bit to buy. I just had them kind of sitting there, and I've been browsing around for a couple other things that we needed for the house, and I forget what it was in this very moment that I had been looking at last, but I was looking at another product, and Amazon actually pushed me over the edge of making my purchase of both the light bulbs that were in my cart and the next thing that I wanted to buy by offering me a cross sell and saying you want to get your light bulbs by Tuesday and get free shipping, just add that other thing that you want to purchase. And when that happened, I was so struck by it that I was like, damn, and I'm someone who notices that stuff and usually can kind of ignore it. But that was one of the moments where I was like, wow, that was really, really clever.
Yeah, I think for anyone just coming into this episode who's why do I need to listen to this? I think music industry is so historically bad at making it easy for people to buy stuff from artists. And for a period of time, that was intentional. For a period of time, it was you were cooler if it was hard to buy your merch and there wasn't much information out there, and it made it more covetable. But yeah, just in general, I think that it's plagued our industry that these tactics of e-commerce have not permeated the hipper than thou layer of the music industry. And everyone we've ever worked with, or more specifically you guys have ever worked with at the agency, where we've made it easier for their fans to buy their merch and lots of it, they've just thrived under those conditions. So.
Yeah, I think as we're kind of diving into this, that's a really interesting point to make, is the kind of cooler than thou, limited edition, make it hard for someone to buy or find kind of mode of operation when it came to selling. I think it comes in all sorts of entertainment industries. Anytime when you have like, celebrity figures or like a cult of personality or whatever it might be, that came out of a time, an age of collectibles where like people would have to go to a retail store to buy something, and that was where the shopping experiences happen. And that was with music, and that was with baseball cards, really any kind of collectible you can think of, Pokemon. But as e-commerce has evolved over decades now, I think the music industry has been the slowest, unsurprisingly, to catch on about ways that you can preserve that limited, collectible, exclusive, urgent nature and still create a really powerful, compelling shopping experience. So that's one of the big reasons that I was excited to talk about this, was just like, there's so much you can do and you can still, preserve the feeling of something being cool.
Yeah, when I hear you guys talk about like the collectibles era, I think back to like Pokemon cards and stuff like that, which at that time super exclusive. And then I think about how it is kind of implemented today, and I think of the fact that I don't see many artists that I follow offering like limited run type things, or like, hey, there's one Charizard out of 1,000 or whatever, like the equivalent is. But I think about Taylor Swift, where she was offering like 4 of the exact same vinyl, but the back covers all stacked up into like a clock for her last album. And it's like, well, that's a collectible that isn't limited. Makes it really easy for somebody to go in and buy 4 albums just of the same product, like immediately. And so that's kind of where my mind goes when I start to think about like, how do you make things exclusive, but how do you make it have a little bit of like an edge and easy to buy at the same time? I feel like something that might be helpful for people that are listening for the first time is for us to maybe outline, like, we're talking about, you want to make it easy for your customers to buy, but what are a couple ways that you can do that? Like, what are maybe the core features or whatever that you implement that makes it easy for somebody to buy? So I'd love to get your guys' kind of quick outlines on those.
Yeah, I would love to hop in on that. Because it's a big part of learning digital marketing is studying Amazon, because it's all e-commerce, and looking at like, what did they innovate in e-commerce? And the 3 big ones for me is one-click purchasing, upselling, and cross-selling. We could take one-click purchasing and reduce it down to just minimize the amount that the customer has to do to complete the checkout, which is why like having this huge order form with like every possible field you could need is often counterproductive. Going for full authorization on credit cards when like, scammers don't often use musicians' e-commerce stores if they can find them to validate credit cards. So like, like a zip code would have been fine in place of a full address. So like minimizing the fields and making it easy to purchase is a huge thing that shouldn't be overlooked. But I'd say the bulk of what we're talking about here is the upselling and the cross-selling. Upselling being, I'm going to offer you something that's more expensive than your initial purchase, that typically complements it or is an upgraded version of it, but not always. Or cross-selling, which is, I'm going to offer you something, say you're buying a t-shirt that is part of an album line. I'm going to offer you a different t-shirt that has different design aesthetics from a different album, or I'm going to offer you, something that is completely unrelated. So upselling typically complements, and cross-selling typically, diverts focus away from the specific lineage that they were thinking about. So, but it can also complement. Like on Amazon, they might offer you batteries with your electronics purchase. Technically a cross-sell, but it also is something you need for it to work out. So
yeah, and I think that that's like so crucial to understand as we start to talk about it, because I think that you could easily get lost if you don't understand those 3 things. But I mean, just right now, you mentioning that, when I think of my most recent Amazon purchase this morning, it's like you add it to the cart. That's the one click, like all my information saved. Anyone that's been on like a specific product page on Amazon, at the very bottom, it's like, these things might pair well, or like, buy these together. Like that's kind of what Cirque's talking about, just as like a reference point. If you're confused, go open up any product on Amazon and you'll probably see these things like right off the bat.
Yeah, I think 2 things that you just outlined, Ed, and you outlined too, Cirque. for anyone who's, maybe hearing this stuff or thinking about it for the very first time, is like, studying this isn't difficult to do, actually. Like, you can do it just by shopping on Amazon, which is which is kind of cool. Like, you become a student of life in some ways when you're learning this kind of quadrant of marketing, like just spending some time shopping around for stuff that you dig. And this exists on other stores besides Amazon. You can find this with some of your favorite brands and other online stores. They might have a Shopify store or something like that, but you can definitely find these things on Amazon. And that's where you start to see, what a powerful cross sell looks like. You kind of experience it, and then you recognize, how it could be applied to what you're doing. Just kind of like I did with the with the cross-selling free shipping sort of mic drop that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I think that that's really where you start to pick up these things, is as you're doing, which is really, really cool. And I think another thing worth mentioning here is like the complementary nature of upsells or order bumps too. Like you can go and you can have an upsell that is more expensive than the product that you're buying to really try to raise the cart value. You can also have smaller, what we call order bumps, which oftentimes they can be less than or slightly more than the product that you're buying, just to try and raise the cart value a little bit. They're oftentimes complementary, and I always like to bring this order bump up, not to make you blush, Ed, but one of my favorite order bumps that I've seen a band do was back years and years and years ago in 2017 when you guys did your album launch for, I believe it was Because We Had To. Yeah, when you guys did the Party album launch, you had those shot glasses as your order bump. And it was so cool because it was, the record, the album was your main offer that you were selling. And then for people that went through this launch experience with you, this digital experience, the order bump were these shot glasses, which was so cool. I mean, we could talk about the whole upsell stack here too. I think it's just such a great example of complementary products, but I always love to talk about the shot glass because it's cheap. It was effective for you guys to sell. Like, it didn't cost a ton, and it felt like something cool. Again, going back to that collectible factor, it was like, holy shit, like if I went through that experience as a fan, like I would kill to have that,
Well, that came out of necessity because it was one color and cheap, like you said. It was black on clear glass. So like we went through a lot of stuff to find that, but that was something at that point in time. That's where Circa was kind of telling me like, hey, here's like what an order bump is. Here's what an upsell is. And don't just put some random product. Like, you have this thing that's a party, make something related to it. And so, I mean, I obviously think that aged very well. Like, at the time, it was just, to me, it was kind of like, oh yeah, shot glass. That seems like it could be cool. But I think that's where you get order bumps ideas from. I think that kind of like a good place to start with this is Cirque and Jack kind of outlined it. I think, like, not to gloss over what you both were saying, which was, if you just are aware of these things and you start paying attention day to day, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. And I think that's like a good first step if you're totally green to it. I mean, I bought tickets online I saw the Mario movie this weekend, which was pretty good, but I bought tickets. I complete my Regal checkout and I got an upsell for an AT&T subscription, a Fit Life food subscription. Like, there was like 4 things I had to click no to.
Bit of a cross sell.
Yeah. But when Regal Cinema started offering me Fit Life food, I was like, all right, I don't know what's going on right now.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, if you're like, well, I don't know where to start, or I don't know where to get ideas for this stuff, like that, just paying attention, I think, is a good spot. And then you can start to apply that to maybe making offers based off of what you're kind of experiencing, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel with this stuff, which I think is important to note.
I think that it's rare to be in a scenario where you're the customer and you have a good sales experience where you're not being upsold. There's tons of bad sales experiences where they're trying to upsell you, and that can happen too. But like, rarely will a good salesperson not make an upsell feel like not only natural and seamless, but like they actually did you a service. They actually showed you something that you weren't aware of. They might have given you a discount on it or a deal because you're purchasing it now. That's what upselling feels like. Another really common one that we're probably all familiar with, 10, 20 years ago would have been McDonald's drive-through, right? Do you want fries with that? That's a cross sell. Would you like to supersize that? That's an upsell. But also now when you're on DoorDash and you're checking out for like a pizza and they're like, would you like brownies with it? That's an upsell or a cross sell. Like, yeah, it happens naturally all the time.
That's a good one. I actually experienced that a lot. Pizza Hut is really good at upselling.
Yeah, Pizza Hut's always offering you those brownies,
Yeah,
dude.
Pizza Hut is so good at upselling and cross-selling. Also bundling. Pizza Hut is really good at bundling, which is a whole nother example that we could pull from of like you can have, bundler apps installed on your store so that, multiple products can get combined together very easily. Similar to the, things frequently purchased together. You can very easily put together bundled packages, and Pizza Hut is king at that when it comes to like, buy the Pizza Hut super box or whatever it is with pizza and breadsticks and wings all in one big heart attack inducing box.
Yeah. Yeah. The most successful upsell in like digital marketer e-commerce warrior forum, like total digital marketing nerd land has always been more. The best upsell is more. If you're buying a supplement, would you like 5 bottles of the supplement? That's the typical upsell. And not only is it easy because you don't have to be creative, but it performs very well. But it's like, how does that work for a musician? And I think Ed bringing up that Taylor Swift example is genius because it's like, how are you going to offer more as an artist? And she's like, we're going to give you a very creative reason to buy 4 of the same exact vinyl. That's so cool. And when you really put your brain to it, or if you approach every campaign where you're selling something as like, what's my upsell going to be? What's my downsell going to be, which I haven't talked about? What would my order bump be? What's a cross sell? If you can come up with these things and make it a part of your process when you go to build your online store or add a product to it, you're just going to do better over time. It's just a multiplier effect.
I have a fun story to share actually from the agency adjacent to the Taylor Swift vinyl clock idea, right? Because if you're listening to this, you might be thinking like, well, I'm not Taylor Swift and I'm not coming up with a cool like limited edition clock. Although I would argue you probably could. One of our clients at IndieX, he made a series of records, just solo records. He actually brought his fans into the studio with him and made like solo acoustic piano vocal records. And he did this every summer, 4 summers in a row, and actually sold tickets to it and had the fans basically pay for the record right there on that day, which was really cool. But aside from that, it gave him a really easy opportunity that as these albums came out, he could sell the sequence of them in series, where now we're on, the 4th volume of these records. And so as he's selling it, he can say, do you want the 3rd one as his order bump? And then the upsell is, do you want 1 and 2 together for a discount? Get the whole collection. It's the same way that you can sell a collection, a summer collection of merch. You see brands do that sort of thing all the time. You can do the same thing with your music.
I mean, I think about like where you guys are talking about the products and get creative. And I do think the Taylor Swift thing is a really good example for maybe slightly bigger artists. What Circa was saying about like, hey, you can offer the same product with the supplements, right? Where hey, you're buying 5 pounds, you want 10 pounds. The same thing for a musician, I would say, is probably what I see work the best for like a grassroots artist is just offering another CD. If like your main order is the CD, then the upsell, the order bump is just another CD. Now, if it's your first CD, the question probably is like, well, I don't have a second CD to sell. Like a bootleg version of that as an upsell and be like, hey, we've got 100 handmade covers. They're bootleg versions. They include demos of the songs. Add it for $15 to your order. Like, I don't think you have to that's a pretty creative upsell, but I guess what I'm going at is like, you don't have to have a whole discography like Jack's saying, where like it's easier if you've got 4, consecutive years of albums to just keep upselling. But if you have one album, you can get creative and arts and crafts your way into an upsell that is very familiar with people. And I always saw people just buy one CD, buy the second CD because they want a CD.
I love the saying arts and crafts your way into a great upsell.
Yeah, better than finagle. I'm going to arts and crafts my way into. For those of you who are in our community already, or you never miss an episode of Creative Juice, you know who Jonah is. He's on our team. Longtime friend of mine, Dukes, and he launched his first self-built free plus shipping and handling funnel. Was doing great with it. He was getting like a 1.6 to 2x return on his ad spend, but his upsell was underperforming. And when you're doing a free plus shipping and handling CD campaign, typically what's best is just another CD. He didn't have any on inventory. So what he did was he offered a pre-order to his upcoming CD. Went from 2x ROAS to a consistent 4x. His upsell is outperforming now. And it just goes to show you that like more of the same is usually good because there's no friction in that. They already are willing to purchase the first thing, which indicates that they're most likely most willing to purchase the exact same type of thing. So there's all types of ways to do more. The classic best performing upsell for us as artists has always been if you're selling them a CD and they're willing to buy a CD, they're probably willing to buy your last CD as well.
This is a fun one to talk about, and it's experimental right now. So like, I'm not saying to go out and do this with any kind of data, but something I'm testing right now with one of our clients at the agency is we made a specific membership tier in their membership site where they get a CD every month for the next year. And we're including that as the last upsell in a funnel. And so I'm really, really excited to see how that performs because that could potentially create then recurring revenue in his business. So I'm really pumped to see. We'll have to make sure to bring that back in a few episodes once I've got some data on it to talk about because it could totally flop or it could crush because it is going into a sales sequence where people are buying multiple CDs. And if the penultimate upsell then is you want like CDs constantly forever, it could perform really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting thinking about, like Cirque said, just selling the same product. And I'm thinking about my experience as a customer where, like, if I'm buying a T-shirt and they upsell me with another T-shirt, cross-sell me or whatever, I'll likely buy that T-shirt. But if they offer me a hoodie, all of a sudden I'm like, well, I don't know if I want a hoodie. And so there's something to really be said. There's like, observe your patterns as a customer, I guess is what I'm saying, because you'll probably notice that like, hey, same product I buy, anything slightly different causes me hesitancy, and then that makes it harder for me to complete the purchase, which is, I think, a really smart point that could go kind of unnoticed.
Ed, do you remember a few years ago when I got ads for that board short company that was doing they were doing free plus shipping and handling board shorts, and the upsell was just another pair of board shorts. These turned out to be really cheap, like crappy board shorts, and they were not good, and the company definitely went out of business for like whack drop shipping. But I bought like 3 pairs of board shorts from them in one shot.
I did too, because the offer was like free. It was free plus shipping, and then they literally just kept offering you shorts until you said no as an upsell. Like, do you want to add this pair? Yes. Do you want to add this pair? Yes. And if you did click no, they said, do you want to add this pair instead? And it was like, they just kept putting every pair of short on the website in front of you. Essentially, once you added one to the cart, they forced you to cycle through their entire inventory of shorts until you said no to everything. And like, it worked on Jack and I, because I bought like 3 pairs as well. It was a pretty smart way.
It's really oftentimes in digital marketing, you're hacking psychology. And what I think a lot of people starting out in digital marketing don't realize is that like 99% of the work you'll have to do is getting someone to a point where they've examined the options, they have decided I'm going to purchase this thing. If you have to restart the consideration process in any way, you just backtracked about 30%. So once you have them in a state of, yes, I am interested in this thing, not backtracking, by minimizing friction just like Amazon does, but also when you're upselling to make it obvious and easy and complementary. The less you can reintroduce decision making to the process, the better.
I want to run down, like, because we've talked a lot about like the concepts and the theories around upselling and cross-selling and order bumps, but we haven't talked much about the tech. And I don't want to get too in the weeds with that because it can vary so heavily depending on what platform you're using for your store and really, how you're bringing customers through a funnel, whether you're sending them to a product page or a landing page or just straight to your storefront. But I do want to mention a couple tools that we use often at IndieX that might be helpful, especially if you're using Shopify as your as your storefront. We really like Zipify pages for building great looking landing pages. We have no affiliation with Zipify. We just really like them. They make it easy to to build nice looking landing pages. You can also build really great pre-cart upsells through this just by having, pages in sequence. Order bumps as well. Zipify also has one-click upsells, which we use from time to time for like post-purchase upsells, one-click upsells. That's pretty great. There are a few other plugins that we like too, and some of which are free that you can check out. One is In-Cart Upsell. It's just a free plugin for Shopify that you can use, or a free app rather for Shopify that you can use just to make a simple one-click add to cart that pops up in someone's shopping cart, and you can make kind of dynamic offers that way. That's pretty powerful. Bundler by Golden Dev, I believe is the name of the development company, is a good one for dynamic bundle opportunities on product pages on Shopify. That's really solid. Another one that I really like is the Frequently Bought Together app is solid. All of these are pretty great, in my opinion, for just adding in that kind of functionality that isn't natively there. So all stuff to consider looking at, especially if you're using Shopify. Or if you're not using Shopify and you're on the fence, this gives you, I think, a good reason to kind of get into the weeds with it.
Kind of an important point to mention, glad you brought it up, Jack, is that the gold standard when it comes to upselling is to keep that friction at a minimum and make it a single decision. And the best way to do that is often to be able to, once someone has entered their billing and shipping info and they've clicked purchase, to then give them the option to one-click add to their order. If you're doing it beforehand, you're introducing decision-making before the most friction-filled part, which is filling out an order form. It sucks. You take out your friggin' wallet and your credit card and you have to type all this stuff. And so introducing decision-making before that happens can literally lose you the sale, just because people only have so much time to make this decision and fill out this form before something else in their life is going to obstruct that pattern. So ideally, you're offering that new product or that complementary product after they've already done that. And to add it to their order is just one click and no further considerations, just because it's the easiest, most frictionless experience. But depending on your technology, you might have to offer them an upsell before they check out. You might have to offer them an upsell and they have to re-check out, which would be the absolute worst. So it is kind of important what technology you're using and what sequence these things go in.
Something we like to do in Shopify, specifically if we do have a chain of pre-checkout upsells, which happens from time to time. Like if you're using Zipify Page Builder, for example, and you want to chain a bunch of order bumps and upsells and downsells together, and that's happening before the checkout process. Something that I've found really helps with conversion rate is when someone either rejects the last offer that they're going to get or accepts the last offer that they're going to get, don't send them to the cart where they're going to see everything totaled up and have quantity values and buttons to remove. Send them straight to the checkout page rather than the cart. It severely increases the chances of them actually converting compared to if you send them to the cart where, you might have just sent them through all those upsell steps and downsell steps, and then they might just go and remove shit from their cart anyway. So if you can skip the cart and take them right to checkout, at the very least, that's going to help remove a little bit more of the friction.
I just picture, I'm just laughing because it's that's a really smart point, right? Because kind of tying this all together in my mind with what you just said and what Cirque said of make it easy, and going back to your shorts example, when I had already put my payment info in for those shorts, and at the time I felt like I was just thumbs upping, do I like these shorts or do I not? Really just judging them. Really, I was adding the shorts to my cart, and had they then taken me to another thing and been like, are you sure you want these? I would have been like, no, I definitely don't want to pay, $200 for shorts.
Yeah, ideally you're not tricking people and they're aware that these purchases are going to cost X amount. Not in Ed's example, but
well, no, but see, they had the prices up there. But yeah, what you're saying, Cirque, is make sure they know the price. But what's smart about what Jack said is if the price is on the upsell page, then just let them pay for it. You don't have to then be it's $25. Are you sure you want to pay me $25? It's they're kind of there's nothing shady about just allowing them to say they want to pay you $25 and then charging them, which is, I think, is a really smart point from Jack.
There's nothing shady about creating a process by which people don't have to make the same decision twice.
Yes. Yeah.
IMO.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it is the case that they like might have declined, like had they been represented with it 2, 3, 4 times. I just, like it's not how commerce typically works.
People have enough reason to doubt the decisions that they're making day to day as it is without you introducing another reason, even if it's unconscious. You presenting a cart page where they can then change the quantity and remove things automatically is kind of like you saying, like, I know you said yes already, but you sure? Like, no, don't do that.
Just take yes as the answer.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like, I imagine people listening to this, like we have to do a little bit of ethical handholding, because on the spectrum between like you have to confirm infinity times before you purchase. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's we'll take your credit card out of your wallet and buy it for you. This exists somewhere in the middle. And so you might be inclined to think that like, well, aren't I just trending towards like being dishonest? And it's like not in the spectrum of that which is commonly practiced in e-commerce and is like sound praxis for an e-commerce marketer. There's a lot within the acceptable range, stopping short of like wiring money from their bank account without them knowing.
That's a really good point, and something one of our IndieX clients has brought up to me actually quite a few times. Whenever we're building funnels, they get really excited because the concept of upsells and cross-sells and order bumps, they see it in their day-to-day life often at convenience stores like Wawa or Sheetz, with the made-to-order computer screens where you go and you click through. That's a really good example of this. It's basically you running through a sequence of offers right there while you're standing in a store. I think that's a really good example, and something that I've noted, similar to what I was saying about taking people to checkout rather than the cart. When you get to the final step where you're, about to hit like submit my order, it rarely allows you at these kind of POS systems to adjust your quantities on that screen. You have to then go very far back to change the quantities or say like, no, I don't want that after all, which I think is good because for me, it's resulted in delicious food and nourishment. So
I think that is important though, Cirque, to be like, this is on your spectrum. It's not like you're just taking money out of accounts. But I think the takeaway is like, don't make people say yes twice. Like, give them the information, get them to say yes, and then allow them to proceed.
There's a fine line between removing friction and being dishonest. I think, again, like going back to the great salesman analogy, like when I'm on Amazon, I don't feel taken advantage of. I feel like I'm having a seamless customer experience. When I'm being sold to by a great salesperson, I don't feel like I'm being taken for a ride. I feel like I'm enjoying the sales process. Thank God, so many of them are negative.
Yeah, I think a key takeaway here is you can orchestrate so much of that through your store. And it's interesting, like, we kind of kicked off this episode saying that we don't see a lot of these processes and tactics being used in music by artist bands in their stores. Something I have been seeing actually in some of my research and just kind of like daily watchings of what's going on in the music space is I have been seeing some in-cart upsells, or I'll call them order bumps more than they are upsells, of digital products specifically, and this is bad, and that's why I bring this up kind of as an example of something to consider not doing, or if you are doing it, changing it, is I was in one artist store and I was just messing around with their shop and seeing what was in there. And so I was like, oh, let me put a t-shirt in the cart and see if I get, I was actually trying to see if I would get an abandoned cart email, just, purely for science. And when I got to the checkout, it was like, do you want a digital copy of the newest single for $1.29? And I was like, this is what we're using the order bump tech for? Great, digital litter. So if you're doing that, consider for a second that you could put something in there that's adjacent to what your fan is actually about to purchase and isn't just going to end up as junk on their computer or not opened in their email.
Yeah, it's so first of all, like if you're an artist out there, you're hearing all this. It's like, what's the actionable step? Start adding upsells and cross-sells to your online store. And every time you go to launch a new product, think about what the upsell would be. Think about what the order bump would be. That's actionable. But I'll say this, there's a value ladder, right? And all throughout marketing, when you're digital marketing, you are bringing a customer to their appropriate place in the value ladder where they're willing to make a purchase. Ideally, it's the highest rung they're willing to make a purchase at. Any higher and they wouldn't be interested. That's ideal, which means that any rung below, you do not have any guesswork. If they're purchasing a shirt from your store, they would purchase a digital single. They're already qualified for that. You do not need to pitch it for them. If they wanted to buy it, they would. You don't need to present it to them. So now, once you have someone at the point of sale, you're testing higher rungs. You're not testing lower rungs. Only once someone has said that rung's too high for me, do you then go lower. And that's called downselling. And we don't do this a whole lot. I mean, I've never done it for IndiePRO, right? We've never sold anything where we have downsells. It's very, very common in e-commerce, which is, did you say no to this upsell? All right, let's test a rung down. Would you maybe want this instead? Ideally, both are discounted, but this, your upsell is going to be at a higher price point, your downsell is going to be at a lower price point. And that's just like maximum expected value juicing of every single customer experience you can have is like, okay, I'm going to try everything. I'm going to throw everything at the wall. Much more common in like fly-by-night e-commerce outfits where they really don't have a relationship with their customers. But there's also enjoyable downsell experiences for customers. You can do it in a way that doesn't feel shady.
Yeah, I mean, we use it a lot at IndieX in client funnels for sure. For example, an easy way to kind of conceptualize this is if you have back stock of records that, 3 albums back or something like this. And I hate to be the one to keep harping on like, oh, if you've got a big discography, because I know not every artist has that. But let's say you do. Or let's say you've got any kind of older product that you're trying to clear out. You can mark it down at, clearance pricing where you're getting a smaller margin, but it still is increasing the order value for you and bringing on a little bit more profit. And you're moving inventory that otherwise would just sit. You can include that kind of stuff in your downsell stack. CDs can work really well for this. Like I was saying, like use an older record, mark it down to clearance pricing, offer that as your downsell. But it can be just as much for soft goods or other products that you've got in your store, as long as they're, related to what it is that the customer is actually going through and buying. I think if you can tie them together nicely in a narrative, there's a really cool way to do it. I love the concept of all of this, like, because you really can tie it back to just communicative sales, like being a salesperson. And having sales conversations. And when you can I think when you start to put that in the framework of how you think about building an online store, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit clearer. Like if you can take this and make it less about like the nuts and bolts of digital and more about like, if I was having a conversation with somebody and, trying to lead them to the things that I think that they would like and that would be cool for them based on what I know that they're interested in, then it becomes like a playground for you a little bit. And Ed's talked about this plenty on the show of like, oh, building offers is like the coolest, most fun thing in the world. And I think when you can start to think about it relationally, not to get too woo or 30,000 foot view about it, but I think that's really where it starts to click.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a really good spot if you're wondering of like, okay, I understand what they're talking about, but I don't know where to start in terms of making upsells. I would say if you have a bandmate or a friend that you could talk to, or even just a fan, just start talking to them about like, obviously like a closer fan, but like, hey, do you like this product? Do you like this? Do you think this is cool? Like that's, I feel like how I come up with a lot of offers, both for myself and with others, just like talking through it with people and being like, oh, I'd love to see this. And it's like, okay, well, where does that fit? We're like, I'd love to have all 3 CDs. Okay, well, how do I arrange that? And like that will help you. Just natural conversation will help you figure out what products maybe can go together and what order they maybe get offered. It's hard to sit with a piece of paper and do it yourself, but to me, it's always been very easy to just have a conversation and then be like, well, we got our offer. There it is. So that's why I think it's fun.
Yeah. I would also say like what you can do is let's just take the initial artist who's maybe got 3 products on inventory. Okay. If you don't have an upsell, go to each of those products and connect them to each other such that when I go to your store and I go to check out for one, I'm being offered the other. If there's no visibility on the other ones when all throughout I'm going to check out, fix that. If you're a little bit more expansive, get all your products in a list and then start grouping them based on what's appropriate for complementary sales offers in the checkout process. And then make sure that you're giving exposure to those other products in the checkout flow for the products they're related to. Another great way to go about this is just go spend time in incognito mode in your online store and see how easy it is to navigate. See when you're looking at certain products, how easy it is to add others. See, is there good visibility across your entire product line? And if not, use these methods to find smart ways to fix that. Ideally, making it easy for people to add them once they've shown you what they're interested in. So if they've shown you, I'm interested in this shirt, offer them other shirts that you might have, because clearly they're interested in a shirt, or maybe it's the artwork on the shirt. Offer them the album that the shirt artwork is from, right? Maybe they're interested in that. So find ways to complement this and make it easy for people to navigate your store through the process of upselling. I think that's tactical advice.
I would agree. I mean, I think that we covered a lot of ground here, from conceptual to tactical on how you can kind of take what's out there in the wild, especially from Amazon, and applying this to your music career. Now, one thing I want to mention before we wrap up here is we did a workshop on this for our IndiePRO community. Circa did a workshop last month, and the replay is available inside IndiePRO. So if you want to get a bit more in-depth with this, that would be a really great opportunity to kind of dive into it and have, sort of a step-by-step and some dedicated time set aside to take these ideas, explore them a little bit more, and then employ them in your own digital stack. So I highly encourage, if you're not an IndiePRO member, you should check it out. Circa put a lot of work in on that workshop, and it came out pretty sick. So I think you should check it out. We'll leave a link to IndiePRO in the show notes. And I think we covered a lot of great ground here today, guys. Thanks for joining us, Circa.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, we'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.
Can y'all really feel us? East Coast, feel us, West Coast.